Hi, and welcome back to Reddit Confessions. Today's story begins with a dare, a laugh, and a betrayal I'll never forget. You won't actually say it. One of her friends giggled. Callie tilted back her glass and replied, "Watch me." The music was loud. The rooftop bar buzzed with Friday night chaos. I was standing right there, 3 feet away, holding her coat like a valet. "I dare you to humiliate your husband. Right now? Say the cringiest thing about him in front of everyone." They all laughed. They thought it was funny. So did she. Callie raised her voice just enough for the table next to us to hear, and probably the one behind it too. "You want cringe?" she smirked. "He still writes love notes. Like actual handwritten notes with forever yours at the bottom. He cried during a dog food commercial last week. And, get this, he once brought me soup in bed, then asked if that made him a gentle prince." A gentle prince, guys? The girls were howling. The strangers around us, turning heads. One guy even pointed. I stood there, in a wrinkled sweater I thought she liked, holding her coat, smiling like a fool. She looked at me then, winked, and added, "Don't worry, babe. It's all love." Then turned away and high-fived Lorna. That was the first cut. Not the deepest, not by a long shot. But it was the first one I didn't pretend to ignore. And it wasn't isolated. See, what you need to understand is this. Callie's friends treated our relationship like a board game. Every time we went out, it felt like I was the evening's entertainment. How much can they mock me without me snapping? How awkward can they make me feel before I break? And Callie? She played along. She thrived in it. There was the dinner party where she mimicked my bedroom voice to the whole table. The pool day where she dared me to wear goggles and then laughed when I actually did. The group chat screenshot she shared of me asking her if I looked handsome that morning, sent with the caption, "Sweetest idiot alive." No reply from her friends ever said, "That's too far." No reply from her ever said, "Sorry. I told myself I was overthinking. That maybe I wasn't tough enough. That love sometimes comes wrapped in teasing." But then came the game. And that was the final blow. We were at Myra's house when the game was born. Mira was one of Callie's newer friends, the kind that dressed like her entire life was a casting call. The living room was crowded with gold balloons and fake crystal glasses. Everyone had a name tag, even me, except mine didn't say Oren. It said Mr. Whispers. I should have left right then. I should have peeled off the sticker, handed Callie my keys, and gone home to rewatch a crime documentary while eating cereal. But I didn't. I smiled like a ventriloquist dummy and stayed because that's what I always did. The game was simple. One of those truth or dare party games, but modernized. You picked a card, did the dare, or answered the question in front of everyone. And if you refused, you had to let someone else in the room post something from your phone. Most people were drinking and laughing too hard to care what they were asked. One girl let her ex text her dad. Another guy gave a full monologue about his worst kiss in high school. It was juvenile, but harmless, until Callie pulled her card. She read it aloud. "Do something that would deeply embarrass your partner, or give your phone to the person on your left." The crowd let out a dramatic ooh. Callie held the card in one hand and her wine in the other, looking straight at me. Her face broke into this slow, delighted grin. I'll never forget that look. Not amused, not hesitant, but eager. She turned to the room and said, "Oh, I've got one. Just wait." Before I could even react, she pulled out her phone, tapped on the screen a few times, then held it up for everyone to see. There, in full screen, was a video she'd secretly recorded the previous week. I was in our kitchen, wearing pajama pants, singing along to a song from a kid's animated movie while stirring pancake batter. Badly. I was off-key, dancing, making stupid hand gestures. And I was smiling, because I thought I was alone. I had been making breakfast for her. Lorna gasped, "Oh my God, this is gold." The entire room exploded. One guy fell backward onto the couch, cackling. A girl actually covered her mouth like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Someone shouted, "Yo, is he doing jazz hands?" Callie was beaming. "Told you he was pure Disney." They laughed, and laughed, and laughed. And I just stood there, frozen, the blood rushing in my ears so loud I couldn't hear myself breathe. For 10 full seconds, I thought maybe I'd disappear. Maybe I'd blink and be somewhere else. But I didn't. I was right there, humiliated on command, like a party trick she could wind up when she needed attention. I didn't speak for the rest of the night. I barely touched my drink. I drove us home in silence. Callie noticed. Of course she did. You're being dramatic, she said when we got inside. It was funny, Oren. You were adorable. Everyone loved it. I stood there at the doorway, gripping my keys like they were the only thing anchoring me to the floor. She reached for my arm, but I pulled away. She paused. Seriously? I finally asked. Did you know what was on that card before you picked it? She shrugged. Not really. But you already had that video. Yeah, she said slowly, blinking. So? I stared at her, waiting, praying, for a flicker of regret, or even just recognition that she'd crossed a line. But all she said was, "You're overreacting. You always take things too seriously. It's exhausting." That word, exhausting. Like my pain was a burden. Like my embarrassment was her inconvenience. I went to bed in the guest room that night. First time ever. I told myself I just needed space. A day or two. I still believed we could fix it. But I didn't know what else she'd done behind my back. I didn't know there were layers to this I hadn't even begun to uncover. I didn't know that Mr. Whispers was just the start. And I didn't know that the next discovery would turn everything, upside down. 3 nights after the game, I was still sleeping in the guest room. Not because she told me to, but because I couldn't bear the thought of sharing a bed with someone who had willingly turned me into a living meme. Callie wasn't apologetic. Not once. She carried on like nothing had happened. She texted me TikToks during the day. She made a pot of coffee in the mornings and asked me if I wanted eggs. At one point, she even joked, "Should I call you Mr. Jazz Hands now?" I laughed. A fake, hollow sound. But deep down, I was unraveling. I tried to talk to my brother about it. I called him from my car while sitting in the parking lot of a grocery store I didn't even need to visit. He listened, sort of, but halfway through my story, he sighed and said, "Man, it's not that deep. Some couples roast each other. You gotta loosen up." Loosen up. That's what everyone said about me. That I was too sensitive, too careful, too soft. And I guess I am. I care too much. I memorize birthdays. I double knot my shoes. I say bless you every time. I notice when someone's voice dips mid-sentence. And I fall in love hard. Maybe that's my problem. But even someone like me, someone who gives too many chances, has a breaking point. And I didn't realize how close I was to mine until I opened her laptop. Let me be clear, I didn't go looking for anything. I'm not a snooper. But Callie had asked me to help print a return label from her Amazon account, and her email was open. She was in the shower. The screen was on. And curiosity, in that quiet moment, felt more like gravity than choice. There was a folder in her inbox labeled Sisterhood. I only clicked it because I assumed it was a group thread for her and her friends. Maybe I thought I'd see them planning another party. Maybe I hoped I'd find evidence she'd felt bad after what happened at Myra's. Instead, I found a thread titled Oren's Greatest Hits. It had over 60 messages, and every one of them was about me. Screenshots of my texts, from good mornings to reminders to drink water. Voice notes I'd sent her singing off-key. A picture I didn't even know she took, of me asleep, mouth open, hugging a pillow. They called me a golden retriever in human form. Emotionally needy. Lovably pathetic. One message from Callie read, "If I ever get murdered, Oren's the guy who'll cry and make everyone soup at the funeral. He's basically a cardigan with anxiety." Another, "He asked me last week if I thought he was a good man. I told him yes. Then I messaged you guys because I couldn't stop laughing." That one physically hurt. I remember asking her that. I was having a low day, and all I wanted was reassurance. I didn't know she turned it into content. I didn't cry. Not then. Not immediately. I just closed the laptop slowly, placed it back on the table, and left the room before she stepped out of the shower. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to sit on the floor by the laundry basket just to keep from falling apart. What shattered me wasn't just the ridicule. It was the intimacy of the betrayal. These were our moments. Our soft, quiet, deeply personal pieces of life. And she handed them out like party favors to her audience of giggling hyenas. And what really broke me was that she enjoyed it. She got attention, laughter, approval, at my expense. That night, I didn't say a word to her. I didn't touch the dinner she reheated. I waited until she was asleep, then sat in the living room and stared at our wedding photo on the mantel. It looked like strangers frozen in a lie. I didn't recognize my own face anymore. The man in that photo had hope, and the man sitting in the dark beside a dying lamp, he only had questions. But the answer was coming, sooner than I expected, because someone from the sisterhood Was about to cross a line even Callie couldn't hide. And when that line snapped, so did I. The next few days were a blur. I went to work. I came home. I pretended. That's what you do when you're crumbling, but haven't found the nerve to collapse. I told myself I needed time to think, but I wasn't thinking. I was spiraling in silence, holding my breath in a house that suddenly didn't feel like mine anymore. Callie didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did, and she just didn't care. She was busier than usual, out late with her friends, texting with a smile that vanished the moment I walked into the room. I wanted to believe she was just giving me space after the jazz hands incident. I wanted to believe she was letting things cool down. But somewhere inside me, I knew something else was happening. I just didn't want to face it. Then it happened. Wednesday afternoon, I was replacing ductwork in an old farmhouse 30 minutes outside town. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Not unusual, but this one wasn't a notification. It was an airdrop request. From a name I didn't recognize, Sisterhood_Loyalist. I hesitated. Then I accepted it. It was a screenshot. At first, I didn't get it. It was a cropped image of a group chat, just 3 lines of text. But then I saw the names. It was them, Callie, Lorna, Bex, Jessa, and another name I hadn't seen before, Save, Savannah, I guessed. She wasn't part of the usual crew. But the message? It was hers. Save. Girl, if you love him, stop. This is cruel. Callie, it's just a joke. He's fine. He always is. Save. No, he's breaking. You can't see it, but I can. I stood still in that attic for almost 5 full minutes, sweat dripping from my neck, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. My hands were shaking again, always the damn shaking. I messaged the number. Who are you? No reply. I messaged again. Why did you send me this? Still no reply. But I didn't need one. That single screenshot said more than I was ready to hear. There was someone who saw what I saw. Someone who knew it wasn't harmless. Someone who realized I wasn't being too sensitive. I was being destroyed. That night, I came home and sat in the garage for nearly 2 hours. No music. No podcast. Just the sound of the engine ticking as it cooled. I thought about leaving right then. Just packing a bag, grabbing my passport, driving to my cousin's place in Maine. Disappearing. But I didn't. Because I wanted answers first. And I wanted proof. So I did the one thing I swore I never would. I logged into Callie's old laptop, the one she stopped using months ago, but never bothered to wipe. Same password as always. Callie Sunshine 19. The wallpaper was a photo of us at Lake Arrowhead. Her head was on my shoulder. I remembered that day. It rained, and we made sandwiches in the back of the car. She told me I made her feel safe. Safe. I went straight to the messages. The device was still synced. And what I found wasn't just occasional cruelty. It was systematic. There were saved folders of photos titled Classic Oren, filled with candid shots of me doing normal things, reading on the couch, dancing in the kitchen, watering the plants in mismatched socks. Each one had been shared with captions like, living with an 85-year-old trapped in a man-child's body. Tell me you married a sentient marshmallow without telling me. He just asked if I wanted a bedtime story. I'm not kidding. But it was worse than that. There were polls. Actual polls. Should I prank Oren tonight? Vote. A. Passive-aggressively ignore him. B. Cry for no reason and blame him. C. Tell him I'm pregnant just to see his face. She ran these things like a club, like a twisted fan base. And they ate it up. And then I saw a private thread. Between her and Lorna. The title of the thread? Phase 2. Phase 2. The most recent message was from 2 days ago. Lorna. Still doing the dare this weekend? Callie. 100%. Gonna be epic. I didn't even want to know what it meant. I didn't want to scroll. But I did. And that's when I saw it. The real plan. She wasn't just mocking me for fun. She was recording a series of videos called Married to Marshmallow that she planned to release as a comedy series on her social media. A launch date. A brand name. A stupid little cartoon logo of a sad-looking guy with oversized glasses holding a bouquet of drooping flowers. It was me. I was the product. The content. The punchline. And she was going to go viral by tearing down every vulnerable thing I'd ever given her. That's when I felt it. Something inside me quietly snap. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a clean, irreversible break. I closed the laptop. I walked into our bedroom. She was asleep on her side, the same way she always curled up when she was dreaming. I stared at her for a long time. Then I grabbed my keys, my wallet, my old hiking pack, and walked out the door. No note. No text. No goodbye. I just left. And I didn't come back. By the time the sun came up, I was halfway across state lines with no real plan. I had slept for maybe an hour, pulled over behind a gas station just outside Elkhurst. I didn't even recline the seat, just leaned my forehead against the steering wheel like it might hold me together. I hadn't cried yet. Not properly. It was more like slow leaks. A single tear every now and then. Quiet ones. The kind you don't even wipe away because you don't want to admit they're happening. My phone buzzed around 7:12 a.m. It was Callie. Where are you? Are you okay? I ignored it. Then, I woke up and you're just gone. WTF, Oren. Then, this isn't funny. This is dramatic even for you. Call me now. I turned the phone off. I didn't want to hear her voice. I didn't want her to explain. Because I knew how that would go. It would be my fault. I was too sensitive, reading too much into things, not strong enough to handle a joke. She would say she loved me, that she was just playing around. But love doesn't feel like public humiliation. Love doesn't come with brand logos and launch schedules. I drove another 4 hours, ended up at a roadside motel outside Buckridge. $49 a night, buzzing light outside the door, and a smell like wet drywall. But it was quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear your thoughts, and unfortunately, I had a lot. Around noon, I opened my phone again. Not to read her messages, but to go back to the airdrop. I scrolled through that screenshot over and over, until I finally tapped the number. Me, why did you send that? Me, again thank you, whoever you are. Me, can we talk? A few hours later, I got a reply. Savannah, I'm sorry. I probably crossed a line. I just couldn't watch it anymore. She's not who you think she is, Oren. That hit harder than I expected. Not because it was a surprise, but because it wasn't. Because someone finally said out loud what I had been whispering to myself at night, over and over. Me, I'm starting to believe that. Savannah, you should. There's something else. But I didn't know if I should tell you. My chest tightened. I typed. Tell me. I need to know everything now. Her next message didn't come for nearly 10 minutes. When it did, it wasn't words. It was a screen recording. Savannah had access to something Callie didn't know she could see. It was a voice memo. From Callie to Bex. Dated just 3 days before I left. In it, Callie said, laughing. So get this. He started crying after I told him we're soulmates. Actual tears. I almost broke. But then I thought, no, I need one more clip for the pilot episode. This one's going viral, Bex. Just wait. Pilot. Episode. Viral. And tears. My tears. I had been grieving what I thought was real, and she was mining it for content. Every moment I thought we were rebuilding, she was documenting it like a reality show villain. I finally broke. In that dim motel room, with the window AC groaning like a wounded animal, I curled up on the edge of that stiff bed and cried like a child. Ugly, shaky, muffled sobs into the motel's scratchy pillow. I don't know how long it lasted. 15 minutes? 40? I couldn't tell. All I know is, when I was done, something inside me had changed. Something had burned out. The man who left that house at 2:34 a.m. was confused, hurt, still reaching for her in his mind, still wanting it to be salvageable. But the man lying in that motel bed now? He was done. The next morning, I messaged Savannah again. I thanked her, not just for the evidence, but for seeing me, for not laughing. She told me one more thing. Savannah, she's planning something for Saturday. A fake apology dinner. Cameras will be hidden. Please don't go back. And I didn't. Not even close. Because I had a plan of my own now. Something quiet. Legal. Precise. Something that didn't involve revenge, just release. Because if she wanted a show, well, it was about to end. The days that followed felt unreal, like I was wandering through a dream someone else designed for me. Except I was wide awake and finally seeing all the props, all the fake sets, all the microphones taped under the table. The illusion of my marriage wasn't unraveling anymore. It was already dust. The only question left was how I would walk through it without cutting myself open on every sharp edge. I stayed in that motel for 3 nights. Each morning started with the same routine, stale coffee from the lobby, ignoring the dozen missed calls from Callie, and pacing the narrow room while staring at the wall like answers were hiding in the wallpaper patterns. I wasn't strong enough yet to answer her. Every notification from her number felt like a live wire pressed to my chest. But I also knew I couldn't avoid her forever. Savannah kept checking in. She never pried, never pushed, just short, quiet messages that somehow felt more human than anything I'd received from my wife in months. On Friday, she sent me something else. A picture this time. It was Callie, dressed in a silky dark blue top, standing in our kitchen with Bex, both of them raising wine glasses. Callie had a wide smile on her face. The caption, which Savannah had cropped from Callie's private story, read, "Big night tomorrow. Let's see if he falls for the apology arc." That's when it fully clicked. She had no idea I was gone for good. She thought this was a dramatic prelude, that I'd come crawling back, camera ready for whatever epic scene she was setting up next. I imagined her writing scripts in her head, narrating the scene for her followers, planning the exact moment she'd break out the fake tears. I could almost hear her. "I just wanted to say sorry. I didn't know it hurt you that much." Pause for dramatic sniffle. Tilt her head slightly. Hold the moment. She thought it was all still a game. She had no clue the game was over. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her with rage. I wasn't going to scream or demand an explanation. People like Callie don't understand consequences until they become the ones holding the silence. I wanted her to feel absence, the kind that echoes, the kind that leaves a mark. I contacted a lawyer first. Her name was Marlene, older, direct, with a voice that made you sit up straighter. I told her everything, or at least enough to explain why I was filing. She didn't seem shocked. She said, "I've seen worse, but not often." She helped me arrange everything, step by step. Property separation, paperwork delivery, protection of personal digital content. I even created a new bank account, moved every cent that legally belonged to me, and left her exactly what the law required. Not a penny less, not a penny more. Then I booked a short-term rental in a small coastal town 6 hours north. Quiet, foggy, anonymous. The kind of place where people walk their dogs in hoodies and no one asks why you're there. I didn't tell a single soul from my life where I was going. I gave the motel key back to the sleepy-eyed man at the counter, packed my few things, and drove off without looking in the rearview mirror. And here's the part that feels the most surreal. I didn't feel sad. Not in the way you'd expect. There was no dramatic crying session on the drive. No angry monologue to myself. Just a numb, eerie calm. Like my heart had finally gone quiet after years of constant noise. I didn't even realize how heavy it had all been until it wasn't sitting on my chest anymore. Saturday came. The day of her big apology. I turned my phone on once, just to see. Dozens of missed calls. One voicemail from Bex. "Hey, Callie's like, actually worried now. If you're ghosting her just to make a point, congrats, we get it. Call her." Then a message from Callie, short and cold. "You didn't show? Real mature. Hope you enjoy playing the victim. I'll explain it all online myself." And finally, a post on her page, the public one, the one with followers. A black and white photo of our wedding day. Captioned, "Sometimes people aren't strong enough to survive love." That made me laugh. Actually laugh. I hadn't realized how badly I needed to. She still wanted to control the narrative. Still playing the role of the misunderstood artist, the tragic bride whose soft husband just couldn't handle her glow. But she didn't know I'd already sent her the papers. They arrived on Monday morning, with a cover letter that said only this. "You wanted a story. This is where mine begins." I haven't heard from her since. She posted something vague later that week. A quote about losing yourself to find yourself. Savannah messaged me one last time after that. Savannah, she knows. She's furious. But honestly, you did the right thing. I thanked her. We haven't spoken since. And now I'm here, in a tiny rental with salty air and creaky floors. Alone, but not hollow. Quiet, but not broken. Healing doesn't look the way I expected it to. It's not a montage. It's slow, sometimes boring. Sometimes I still reach for my phone expecting a message from her, and then remember, no, not anymore. But every morning I wake up, and the first thing I feel isn't dread. That's how I know I made the right choice. It's strange how quickly a home turns into a museum. After the papers were sent and silence became our only shared language, I knew I had to go back one last time. Not to see her, not to talk, just to gather what was still mine: clothes, old journals, the box of letters I used to write her before we got married. I didn't expect anything beyond that. I was numb again, wrapped in a dull layer of practical logic. But the moment I stepped through that front door, I realized something. Callie had erased me. The house didn't look ransacked or trashed. It looked redecorated, sanitized, like someone had walked through the rooms with a wet cloth, wiping away every sign of me. My coat wasn't on the rack. My slippers weren't by the door. The framed photo of us in that dorky Christmas onesie set, gone, replaced by some abstract canvas print with no soul. Even the refrigerator was different. No dumb magnets. No sticky notes with dumb messages like, "Don't forget your lunch, marshmallow." Just a sterile silver surface that reflected my tired face back at me. But the most disturbing thing? My office, which had once been a sanctuary for all my small, quiet routines, had been transformed into a makeshift studio. There was a ring light near the desk, and a large whiteboard with scribbled notes. Episode 1. He thinks he's the romantic lead. Episode 2. The bedtime poem, play VO audio. Episode 3. Cooking with feelings, pasta clip. I stood there, staring at my former life like it had been auctioned off and resold under a new title. I hadn't just been her husband. I had been her storyline. Every vulnerable thing I'd done, every sweet, dorky, overly sentimental part of myself, had been carved up and labeled for views. My real memories had been filtered through sarcasm and turned into punchlines. I found the pasta clip on her external drive. It was me in the kitchen, trying to make her late-night spaghetti when she had a migraine. I was humming, narrating it in a terrible Gordon Ramsay accent. I remember doing it to cheer her up. She had been curled up in bed, pale and quiet. I thought it made her smile. But the saved video was labeled Whipped Linguine, Part 1. I didn't take the drive. I didn't even touch the ring light. I walked out of that room, out of that house, and down the driveway with a single duffel bag. That was it. I left the rest. If she wanted props, she could keep them. But she couldn't keep my voice. Back in my new place, the little rental near the coast, I started writing again. I hadn't written anything creative in years. I used to do short stories in college, poems during coffee breaks at work. But somewhere along the way, I stopped. Maybe because I spent all my energy loving someone who couldn't see the value in softness. Maybe because I didn't think my words mattered anymore. But now I wrote about small things. A man watching rain from a diner window. A kid asking his dad why people pretend to laugh. A girl who records every moment of her boyfriend's life and only realizes what she's lost when the footage starts to glitch. I didn't write about her directly. I didn't need to. The pain had shape now. I didn't have to name it. Then one night, I got an email. No subject line. Just a name in the sender, Savannah. I hesitated before opening it. My heart stuttered in my chest. She hadn't reached out in weeks. Part of me thought she'd just faded out of this entire mess. But the message was simple. She posted a goodbye video. It's going around. I didn't want you to be caught off guard. I found the link in less than a minute. It was already getting thousands of views. Callie sat on a stool in a dim room. The title read, When Love Fails, My Side of the Story. She was wearing one of the sweaters I had bought her. I couldn't tell if that was deliberate or just one of those cruel coincidences life throws like darts. She didn't cry. Not really. Her voice cracked once. She said things like, I made mistakes. We joked too much. He was sweet, but we lost the spark. It was never meant to hurt him. I think he still loves me. And part of me loves him too. She never mentioned the videos. Never admitted to monetizing our marriage. Never explained the polls, the scripts, the performance. But the comments were full of people telling her she was brave, telling her they understood. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel rage. I felt relief. Because none of it mattered anymore. She could have her version. I had truth. A quiet, honest life in a place where no one knew my name. A slow, careful rebuilding that didn't need an audience. And a peace that didn't depend on applause. The hardest part wasn't leaving her. It was realizing how long I'd been gone before I ever walked out the door. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being Oren. Not just the man she married, but the man I used to enjoy being. I'd let myself shrink to fit inside someone else's spotlight. I convinced myself I was too much, too needy, too emotional. I tried to package myself into something more digestible, quieter, cooler, funnier. But no matter how much I twisted myself around her comfort, she always found a new way to laugh at the shape I took. But now, months later, I wake up and make coffee without wondering if it'll be a meme. I hum again when I cook. I wear mismatched socks on purpose. I call my mom more. I read the stupid bedtime poems I used to write, and now I read them just for me. A few weeks ago, I started volunteering at a small community writing workshop. Nothing fancy, just a group that meets in the back room of the library twice a week. Most of the folks there are older than me. There's a retired trucker who writes poetry about his golden retriever, a woman named Jean who's working on a fantasy novel with talking trees, and a teenager who only writes in lowercase. It's honest. No cameras. No judging. Just people telling stories that matter to them. And there, in that quiet little circle, I told my story for the first time. Not as content, not as confession, but as healing. They listened. No one laughed. Someone even said, "You remind me of someone I used to love. I wish he knew it." That stayed with me. And in the oddest twist of fate, Savannah ended up joining one of the sessions. She didn't say much at first, but she smiled when she saw me, and I could tell she'd made peace too. We've had coffee a few times since then, not dates, just conversations. We talk about writing, about things that aren't betrayal, about quiet lives and how underrated they are. She said something once that stuck with me. "You didn't overreact, Oren. You just reacted finally." And she was right. I didn't burn bridges. I didn't plot revenge. I just walked out of the script someone else wrote for me and started writing my own. If you're reading this and wondering whether you're crazy for wanting more than being someone's joke, someone's side plot, someone's side-eye emoji in a group chat, you're not crazy. You're human. You're allowed to want kindness. You're allowed to be soft. You're allowed to walk away from what hurts, even if it doesn't leave bruises people can see. Thank you for staying with me through all 8 parts of this journey. If this story resonated with you, or reminded you of something you've lived through, I'd love for you to share one moment that changed your path. Whether it was quiet or explosive, funny or painful, tell us in the comments. Let's fill this space with truth. And as always, thanks for watching and supporting Reddit Confessions, where every story, even the messy ones, deserves to be heard.